My name is Olivia, and if you had asked me a year ago, I would have told you I was living a dream. At 28, I was married to Nathan, a man I once believed was my soulmate. We lived in a stunning house in Austin, Texas, with our beautiful daughter, Lily, who had just turned 3. She was the light of my life, my reason for waking up every morning with a smile. Nathan was everything I had ever wanted. At least, that's what I told myself. At 35, he was a successful entrepreneur, charming, ambitious, and always busy building his empire. People admired him, respected him, and I was proud to be his wife. I had dedicated my life to our family, happily playing the role of the perfect homemaker. My days were spent planning Lily's meals, playing with her in the backyard, and dreaming about the wonderful future we would have as a family. From the outside, we were picture perfect. Nathan worked hard, and though he often came home late, I believed it was all for us. When he surprised Lily with gifts or lifted her high in the air, calling her his little princess, I felt reassured. He was a good father, wasn't he? He loved us, he had to. I never questioned his sudden business trips, his late nights at the office, or the way his phone was always turned face down. I trusted him completely, because that's what a good wife does, right? Trust, believe, support. Lily was my entire world. At 3 years old, she was a bundle of energy, always curious, always giggling. Her laughter filled our house like music, her tiny hands reaching for mine whenever she needed comfort. I had no idea how much that comfort would soon be tested, because beneath the illusion of our perfect life, cracks had already started to form, cracks I was too blind to see. And soon, those cracks would shatter everything. It started with a simple cough. Just a little cold, I told myself. Nothing to worry about. But by the next evening, Lily's fever had skyrocketed. Her tiny body burned with heat, her skin clammy, her breathing shallow. She whimpered in my arms, her once bright eyes dull with exhaustion. Fear tightened around my chest like a vice. I tried everything. Cool compresses, fever reducers, holding her close and whispering soft reassurances. But nothing worked. Her fever only climbed higher. Her little hands, usually so full of life, lay limp against my chest. Panic surged through me. I grabbed my phone and dialed Nathan. He picked up after few rings. "I'm about to board a plane, Olivia. This better be important." Tears blurred my vision. "Nathan, it's Lily. She's really sick. Her fever won't break, and I don't know what to do. She needs a doctor." A long pause. Then his voice, cold and detached. "Olivia, kids get sick. Just give her some medicine. I'm not canceling my business trip over a fever. Listen to me." My voice cracked. "This isn't just a fever. Something's wrong. She's barely conscious." Another pause. I held my breath, hoping, praying he would come through, that he would be the husband and father I needed him to be. Instead, he sighed. "I don't have time for this, Olivia. You're her mother. Handle it." And then he hung up. I stared at the phone, disbelief washing over me. My hands trembled as I redialed. Straight to voicemail. I sent texts, voice messages, begging him to answer. Each one was marked as read. None received a reply. I had never felt so alone. Lily let out a weak, pained whimper, snapping me back to reality. I had no time to break down. No time to wonder how the man I had loved for 7 years could be so heartless. I scooped her up and rushed to the hospital, driving as fast as I could, whispering desperate prayers between my sobs. The emergency room was a blur of fluorescent lights, frantic nurses, and medical jargon I barely understood. A doctor named Dr. Reynolds, a neurologist, examined Lily, his face growing serious. "The fever has caused neurological complications," he explained grimly. "We need to operate immediately. Without surgery, she could suffer permanent damage, or worse." My knees buckled. "Surgeries?" My voice was barely a whisper. "How much?" Dr. Reynolds hesitated before saying, "You'll need to pay a $200,000 deposit before we can proceed." I gasped. $200,000? My heart pounded. I don't have that kind of money." His face was sympathetic, but his tone was firm. Time is critical, Ms. Walker. The sooner we operate, the better her chances. I grabbed my phone again, fingers shaking, and called Nathan. No answer. I texted. Nothing. I sent voice messages, pleading.
He saw them.
He ignored them. The realization hit me like a freight train. Nathan didn't care. I stood in that cold hospital hallway, holding my dying daughter's hand, abandoned by the man I had trusted most. Desperation clawed at my throat. I had no time, no options. And then it hit me. I had one choice left. I turned and ran out of the hospital, straight home. I tore through my bedroom, grabbing my jewelry box. Every piece I had ever owned, my wedding ring, family heirlooms, everything. I sold it all. It wasn't enough. Choking on my tears, I begged the jeweler to advance me the rest. By some miracle, he agreed. With the money in hand, I rushed back to the hospital and shoved the deposit at the front desk. Dr. Reynolds and his team moved swiftly, taking Lily into surgery. Hours passed like lifetimes. I sat in the waiting room, arms wrapped around myself, rocking back and forth as silent tears streamed down my face. And then, finally, Dr. Reynolds stepped out. The surgery was successful, he said with a reassuring smile. Lily is going to be okay. Relief crashed over me, and I collapsed to my knees, sobbing. Lily was safe. She was alive. But as I sat there, a new feeling bloomed beneath the exhaustion and relief.
Rage.
Nathan had abandoned us. He had ignored me in my most desperate moment. He thought he could walk away from his responsibilities. But he had no idea what was coming. By the time he woke up the next morning, his perfect little world had already begun to crumble. I stood in the waiting room, my body trembling with exhaustion and relief. The worst was over. Lily had made it. The surgery was successful. She was alive. But the weight of what I had just done, the sacrifices I had made, pressed down on me. My fingers instinctively reached for my ring, only to find my hand empty.
Gone.
Everything was gone. My wedding ring, my mother's necklace, my grandmother's heirloom bracelet, every piece of jewelry I had ever owned. I had sold it all, every last bit, just to save my daughter's life. And where had Nathan been? Ignoring my calls, ignoring my cries for help. A new kind of pain settled in my chest, not just heartbreak, but something deeper, something colder. I clenched my fists. I couldn't think about that now. Lily needed rest, and so did I. When she finally woke up, I held her close, brushing the damp strands of hair from her forehead. "You're safe now, sweetheart," I whispered. "Mom is here." She smiled weakly, her tiny fingers curling around mine. "Home." I kissed her forehead. "Yes, baby. Let's go home." The drive back was quiet, my mind a whirlwind of emotions. Part of me still believed, still hoped, that Nathan would be there, that he would have come to his senses, that he would be waiting at the door, arms open, ready to apologize, that he would tell me he had made a terrible mistake. I pulled into the driveway and saw his car. My heart leaped with a flicker of foolish hope. Maybe, just maybe. Then I saw the second car. A sleek, red sports car that didn't belong to me. My stomach twisted. Something was wrong. Clutching Lily close, I hurried to the front door. The house was lit up, warm and welcoming, as if nothing had changed. As if my world hadn't just been ripped apart. I pushed the door open. Laughter. A woman's laughter. My breath caught in my throat as I stepped inside. And then I saw them. Nathan stood in the middle of the living room, his arm draped casually around a tall, gorgeous woman with flawless hair and a smug smile that sent ice through my veins. She looked at me like I was an inconvenience, like I was nothing. "Nathan." My voice barely came out. He turned, his expression calm. Too calm. "Olivia." I swallowed hard. "Who is this?" The woman smirked. "I'm Vanessa." Nathan didn't even flinch. "We're together now." The words didn't make sense at first. My brain refused to process them. Together now? I tightened my grip on Lily, feeling her small body shiver against me. "I don't understand." Nathan, I just came back from the hospital with our daughter. She almost died. And you're here, my voice cracked. With hers? He sighed, running a hand through his hair like I was the one being difficult. Look, Olivia, I've made my decision. You and Lily, you'll figure things out on your own. My entire world tilted. I took a shaky step forward. What are you saying? I don't have room for this in my life anymore. His voice was so detached, so heartless. I need to move on. You should, too. I blinked, struggling to breathe. Nathan, we have nowhere to go. His jaw tightened, but his eyes remained indifferent. That's not my problem. A sharp laugh cut through the room. Vanessa.
Wow.
This is awkward, she said, her tone dripping with mock sympathy. Nathan walked past me to the front door. Your things are packed. He opened it, gesturing outside. They're on the porch. For a moment, I couldn't move, couldn't breathe. He was serious. He was throwing us out. Our home. The place I had built, where I had raised our daughter, where I had once felt safe. It wasn't ours anymore. Lily whimpered in my arms, confused, scared. I forced my legs to move, stepping toward the door, my heart shattering with every step. I turned back, one last time. You'll regret this, Nathan. My voice was steady, even as tears ran down my face. He didn't even blink. Do what you need to do. Vanessa leaned against the doorframe, smirking. Good luck, sweetheart. The door slammed shut in my face. I stood there, frozen, the cold night air biting against my skin. I had nothing left. No home, no money, no husband. But as I looked down at Lily, her innocent face pressed against my shoulder, something inside me hardened. This wasn't the end. Nathan thought he could throw us away like garbage. But he had no idea what was coming. By the time I was done, he would wish he had never crossed me. The night was cold. I stood outside the house that was no longer mine, clutching Lily close as she shivered in my arms. My body was numb, not just from the wind, but from the weight of everything I had lost in a single evening. Nathan had discarded us like we were nothing. I wanted to scream, cry, break something. But Lily needed me. Falling apart wasn't an option. With nowhere else to turn, I pulled out my phone and called the one person who had always been there for me.
Grace.
She answered on the first ring. Olivia? Her voice was filled with concern. And that was all it took. The dam broke. I sobbed, words tumbling out in a rush. Nathan, the hospital, the betrayal, the way he had thrown us out like garbage. Grace didn't hesitate. Come to me, she said firmly. I'm at the shelter. You and Lily will be safe here. The women's shelter where Grace worked was warm and welcoming, but stepping inside still felt like a punch to the gut. I never thought I'd end up here. Grace pulled me into a hug the second she saw me. You're not alone in this, she whispered. Over the next few days, I told her everything. I spoke through tears, through anger, through exhaustion. When I finished, she leaned back, eyes narrowed. Something's off, she murmured. What do you mean? She tapped her fingers against the table, deep in thought. Nathan didn't just walk away from his family, out of nowhere. A man like him, calculated, ambitious, doesn't just throw away his entire life without a reason. I swallowed hard. So what? You think there's more to this? Grace nodded. I think he's hiding something. And I know someone who can help us find out. That's how I met Ethan. He was in his early 40s, with sharp eyes that seemed to see right through me. The kind of man who didn't waste time with small talk. I'll dig into Nathan's life, he said, flipping open a notepad. If there's anything to uncover, I'll find it. I wasn't sure what to expect. Maybe proof of another affair. Maybe confirmation that he had been lying to me for years. But what Ethan uncovered was so much worse. A week later, he walked into Grace's small office, his face grim, a folder tucked under his arm. Olivia, he said, setting the folder on the desk, you need to brace yourself. This isn't just about infidelity. My stomach twisted. What do you mean? Ethan opened the folder, revealing photos, documents, and financial records. Nathan and Vanessa aren't just having an affair, he explained. They're business partners. Criminal business partners? I stared at him, trying to process the words. Criminals? He's been laundering money, Ethan continued, running fraudulent business deals, funneling funds into offshore accounts. And he's been doing it for years. The room started to spin. Nathan was a criminal. Ethan flipped through more documents. Federal authorities have been suspicious of him for a while, but they've never been able to pin anything on him. He's careful. But now, with Vanessa in the picture, he's gotten sloppy. I gripped the edge of a table. So, what does this mean? It means you have leverage, Ethan said simply. And it means we can bring him down. I looked at the evidence spread before me, my pulse pounding. Nathan had destroyed my life, without a second thought. Now, it was my turn. And I wasn't going to stop until he lost everything. For the first time since Nathan had thrown us out, I didn't feel powerless. I sat in Grace's office, staring at the evidence Ethan had gathered, my hands gripping the table so hard my knuckles turned white. Nathan wasn't just a cheater. He was a criminal. And now I had the proof. Grace leaned forward, her eyes burning with determination. What's the next step? Ethan set down his coffee. We build a case. We need more evidence, enough to make sure he can't wiggle his way out of this. I took a deep breath, my rage fueling me. Then let's get to work. Ethan was relentless. He tracked down former employees, business partners, anyone who had worked closely with Nathan. Some refused to talk, too scared or too loyal. But others, ones Nathan had burned, were more than willing to help. One by one, the stories piled up. Fraudulent contracts, stolen funds, offshore accounts filled with dirty money. Nathan had built his empire on lies, and now it was all starting to crack. One former employee, a woman named Lisa, met with us in a small cafe on the outskirts of town. She had worked as Nathan's financial assistant for 3 years before he suddenly fired her. He told me it was downsizing, she said, stirring her coffee with shaking hands. But the truth? I knew too much. Ethan leaned in. Tell us everything. Lisa exhaled sharply. He's been laundering money through fake shell companies. Vanessa, she's been in on it since the beginning. They funnel funds overseas, making it look like investments, but it's all a front. I clenched my jaw. So he didn't just betray me. He's been stealing from everyone. Lisa nodded. And he thinks he's untouchable. Not anymore. Grace had a contact, Megan Carter, a powerhouse lawyer with a reputation for taking down corporate criminals. When I met her, she didn't waste time on pleasantries. Olivia, I've gone through the documents Ethan sent me. She leaned forward, her sharp gaze locking onto mine. This is airtight. We can nail him for fraud, embezzlement, and financial crimes that could put him away for a long time. The words sent a thrill through me. What do we do next? Megan smiled. We go for the jugular. She filed an emergency injunction to freeze Nathan's assets, making sure he couldn't transfer his money before the authorities closed in. Meanwhile, Ethan worked behind the scenes with law enforcement. The feds had been circling Nathan for years, but never had enough evidence. Now, thanks to Ethan's meticulous work, they had everything they needed. The plan was set. A raid. And Nathan wouldn't see it coming. The day of the raid, I stood outside the glass-walled office building Nathan owned, my heart pounding in anticipation. Inside, business continued as usual. Nathan was in a meeting, completely oblivious. Until law enforcement stormed in. Through the glass, I saw the chaos unfold. Officers flooding in. Nathan's face twisting in shock and rage. Vanessa was there too, standing beside him when the agents slapped handcuffs on them both. The moment was surreal. Nathan, always so composed, so in control, now humiliated in front of his entire company. I watched as he was dragged out of the building, cameras flashing, reporters shouting questions. The news spread like wildfire. Prominent businessman Nathan Walker arrested in multi-million-dollar fraud scheme. Nathan's world was crumbling. And I had lit the match. I turned away, the cold wind hitting my face, but inside, I felt nothing but satisfaction. This was just the beginning. The day of the trial, I stood outside the courthouse, gripping Lily's small hand. She looked up at me, wide-eyed, trusting. She had no idea how much this moment meant. This wasn't just about justice. This was about taking back our lives. Grace and Megan stood beside me, their unwavering support giving me strength. Moments later, Ethan joined us, his expression calm but determined. "We've got this," he said. I nodded, steeling myself. Then, together, we walked inside. The courtroom was intimidating, high ceilings, polished wooden benches, and the heavy presence of justice in the air. Across the room, Nathan sat in his tailored suit, hands clasped together like he still had control over everything. But his eyes, cold and calculating, gave away his unease. Beside him sat Vanessa, her once smug expression replaced by something tight and nervous. When Nathan caught my gaze, he smirked, like this was just another business deal. He had no idea what was coming. When my name was called, my legs felt like lead as I walked to the witness stand. I took a deep breath, placed my hand on the Bible, and swore to tell the truth. And then I spoke. I told the courtroom everything. How Nathan had abandoned Lily when she was fighting for her life. How I had sold every piece of jewelry I owned to pay for her surgery while he ignored my calls. How I had come home, exhausted and broken, only to find him with Vanessa, laughing like we never existed. The betrayal, the cruelty, the moment he threw us out onto the streets. Every word was a knife, cutting through his carefully curated image. Nathan sat there unmoving. But I saw it, the slight twitch of his jaw, the way his fingers clenched just a little too tightly. He wasn't in control anymore. Megan took over, presenting every piece of damning evidence. The fraudulent business deals, the offshore accounts, the stolen money. Nathan's defense team scrambled, but they had nothing. And then the final blow came. Megan called Vanessa to the stand. She hesitated, her eyes darting toward Nathan. He gave her a look, a silent command to keep quiet. But Vanessa wasn't as strong as he was. She crumbled under pressure. She swallowed hard. I didn't know how deep it went. At first, I thought it was just bending the rules a little. But the fraud, the laundering. Nathan was the mastermind. He made the decisions. He handled the accounts. Nathan's head snapped toward her, his control slipping for the first time. "Vanessa, shut up." The judge banged his gavel. "Mr. Walker, you will not speak out of turn." Vanessa's hands shook. "He told me not to ask questions. That if I did, I'd regret it." Her voice cracked. I didn't want to go to prison." And with that, she buried him. The courtroom fell silent as the judge reviewed the evidence. Finally, he looked up, his expression firm. "This court finds Nathan Walker and Vanessa Carter guilty of multiple counts of fraud, money laundering, and financial conspiracy." His voice was steady, unwavering. Their actions were not only illegal but morally reprehensible. My breath caught as he turned toward me. "Mrs. Walker, your courage in bringing these crimes to light is commendable. This court awards you full custody of your daughter, Lily Walker. Furthermore, all legal assets belonging to Mr. Walker, excluding those tied to his crimes, will be transferred to you for financial security." Nathan's face drained of color. Vanessa whimpered. The guards moved in, securing the handcuffs around their wrists. Nathan struggled, his control slipping completely. "This isn't over, Olivia," he snapped as they led him away. "You think you've won?" I stood tall, meeting his gaze without fear. "I don't think, Nathan," I said coldly. "I know." And then he was gone. Outside the courthouse, Grace hugged me tightly. "You did it, Olivia. It's over." Ethan smirked. That was satisfying to watch. Megan placed a hand on my shoulder. "You're free now. You and Lily can finally start over." I looked down at my daughter, who was watching me with a sleepy smile. "Are we happy now, Mommy?" she asked softly. Tears filled my eyes, not of sadness, but of relief. I knelt down and cupped her little face. "Yes, sweetheart. We're happy. And we're safe." For the first time in a long time, I felt truly free. And as we walked away from the courthouse, I didn't look back. The house was small, nothing like the one I had once lived in with Nathan. But it was ours. I stood in the doorway, Lily on my hip, taking it all in, the cozy living room, the sunlit kitchen, the backyard where she could play freely. There was no cold silence, no ghosts of betrayal lingering in the air. Just peace. Grace helped me unpack, organizing the essentials while Lily ran from room to room, giggling with excitement. "You're going to love it here," Grace said, placing a hand on my shoulder. "It's the fresh start you deserve." I nodded, my chest swelling with gratitude. "I don't know what I would have done without you." She grinned. "That's what best friends are for." As I settled into our new life, I found myself drawn back to the shelter, the place that had given me hope when I had none. I started volunteering, helping women who had stories eerily similar to mine. They came in broken, abandoned, betrayed. But I saw the strength in them, the same strength Grace had seen in me. One afternoon, as I packed supplies, Grace nudged me playfully. "You know, you're pretty good at this. Ever think about doing it full-time?" I smiled, considering it. "Maybe. It feels good to help." Helping others heal was helping me heal, too. Megan worked tirelessly to finalize the legalities of my settlement. With the assets I had been awarded, I was finally financially secure. No more relying on anyone else. No more wondering if I'd have enough to provide for Lily. For the first time in years, I was in control of my own future. One night, as I tucked Lily into bed, she looked up at me with sleepy eyes. "Mommy, are we happy now?" Her voice was soft, innocent, yet filled with the kind of wisdom only children seem to have. I stroked her hair, thinking about everything we had been through, the heartbreak, the betrayal, the fight for justice. And then I smiled. "Yes, baby," I whispered. "We're happy. And we're safe." As I turned off the light, a feeling of peace settled over me. This wasn't just a new beginning. It was a life we had fought for. And we were finally free.